Hi guys, there was a bit of a bizarre exchange that took place during PMQs on Wednesday, where Sunak raised a point about cooperating amongst the parties in the House of Commons on national security. Now, both sides were pretty much in agreement. However, the Tory leader then threw a bit of a spanner into the works by claiming that the new government had blocked a measure. Starmer's response was short and sweet, claiming that Sunak was being dishonest. Then the Tory tried to inject another issue that was completely unrelated to this, and the whole decorum sort of fell apart. Have a listen.
Rishi Sunak.
Yes, I can assure the Prime Minister of his support. It is something that we began. The United States recently have expanded their sanctions, and I hope that the new government will continue to look at doing the same. Now, the last government also established a new system of registration and monitoring to protect the UK from interference from foreign states, including China, Russia and Iran. Called the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme, it was described as essential by MI5 in the fight to help keep Britain safe. But since the Prime Minister took office, he has halted its implementation. Why?
That isn't correct.
Rishi Sunak.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that is very clearly what the government has said. And only last week he said at the dispatch box that he would give the security forces the powers they need. And if he is going to fulfil that promise, I would urge him to get up to speed on this issue and therefore implement the scheme. Furthermore, Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee have warned that British universities are increasingly a rich feeding ground for China to exert political influence over us. That's why we passed the Freedom of Speech Act with new powers to help defend universities from this threat, but the new Education Secretary has since blocked it.
Because it's completely unrelated. This is about wokeism, this is about culture wars. This was nothing to do with national security. So what is he talking about here? Why is he injecting something that's completely unrelated to national security into a topic about national security?
So can the Prime Minister tell us how, without this tool, the government will prevent Chinese influence over our universities?
I really don't think party political points on security and intelligence. Honestly. Throughout the last Parliament, we stood with the government on all questions of security and intelligence because it was important to the outside world that we did so. I worked with the security and intelligence services for 5 years prosecuting cases. I know firsthand the work that they do as a lawyer. I've known firsthand the work they do as the Prime Minister. We support them in everything that we do, and he knows that.
A very good answer. Because as what's happening here, as happens always with the Conservatives, is that they're trying to score political points. Injecting something that's completely unrelated to national security into the discussion to try and spin it like, well, look, the government is not really taking national security seriously. Once again, this bill, this free speech bill that Rishi Sunak is talking about, is completely unrelated to national security.
Rishi Sunak.
Mr. Speaker, whether it's the FIRS scheme or the Freedom of Speech Act, these were new tools, new sets of powers that the previous government passed in order to give, whether it's our universities or security services, the powers they need to tackle a growing threat. And we will, of course, continue to support the government in protecting our national security, but do believe on this side of the House that those tools are needed and are concerned by reports that the new government has paused their implementation or indeed scrapped them. But finally, Mr. Speaker, the Chinese government has sanctioned multiple members of our parliament for championing human rights. As a result, they have faced intimidation, abuse and surveillance. And Mr. Speaker, I commend you for your defence of the right of every member of this House to speak out on crucial issues without fear of retaliation from foreign states. Now, I know the Prime Minister will agree with that too. So this week, will the Foreign Secretary in his meetings not just raise the issue, but tell the Chinese government to lift those sanctions on our colleagues?
Yes, and we speak with one voice. He speaks about the record of the last government. That record was 14 years of failure. 6 years austerity, 3 years of Brexit logjam, then Johnson, Trust and the Leader of the Opposition, utter failure. And this government was elected to do things differently, to make fairer choices, but most importantly to give Britain its future back. So we will fix the foundations, we'll do it with a long-term plan to grow our economy, protect working people and rebuild our country.
Okay, look, I understand it's all political theatre. PMQs is a complete waste of time. But I understand this is playing to the crowd. Starmer has a massive majority. He's able to drown out the Conservatives and the opposition parties with this sort of speech. And he's adding it at the end of every PMQs. We have to rebuild the 14 years of Tory rule. And he's correct. He's completely correct to criticise the Conservatives. But it seems added in at the end. It doesn't seem to flow correctly with the rest of the speech. Because Starmer was responding to Sunak's, whether we believe it or not, gesture of let's cooperate, let's make sure that MPs who are threatened by a foreign power are challenged on that, or are protected, and the foreign power is challenged on that. And Starmer said yes, and then he went into his rant. Look, I understand, and he's correct to criticise the Conservatives, correct to call them out on 14 years of rule, disastrous rule. But it seems unnatural. It doesn't seem to flow correctly, and maybe he should consider dropping it at the end or adding it at the beginning instead. Open on that, and then close on something else, because it doesn't fit for me. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.